right, we are live.
We
So,
are.
welcome everyone. I'm just checking if YouTube is also working. It should. Yeah, welcome everyone. Today I'm sitting here with Nicole, and we are going to be discussing a little bit more about animations in Compose.
My
So,
favorite topic.
yeah, Nicole, maybe a little bit introduction of you. I know that you've done tons of talks on the topic. The last time I saw you on a conference was 2023, Kotlin Conf in Amsterdam. Since then, I
What?
haven't joined a conference live, unfortunately.
What?
Uh, but since then, you've done a lot of talks, and yeah, you're an expert in this topic. And also, you have won Golden Cody Award this year. So
Right,
tell us
right.
more about that.
I actually should have it around here. Yes. Here it is. It looks so cute.
Nice.
So a little bit about me. I'm an Android developer for a couple of years, more like 10. Let's not talk about dates anymore. I love like talking about things, sharing about my experience. I especially like making things move in the screen. So that's why like the topic of animations was like just my topic. And I've been going to conference for several years actually. I'm originally from Mexico, so in there, I was also talking like Android topics here in Berlin, which where I'm based. I just started going wild, going to all the DroidCon, Scotland Conf, and I've been talking about a lot of things like since the beginning of the APIs when the documentation was really shaky until now that the documentation is quite better, and we have a lot. So it can be an overwhelming topic. So yeah, I don't know where do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, you've made, I don't know, gazillions of talks on on the topic. So maybe you can share your experience, like the learning curve. How was it for you?
Yeah.
I assume while preparing for these talks, you have to visit tons of materials and tons of learning. So maybe let's start there.
Sure. So I've been giving talks since, as I said, overview of animation APIs into going very deeply on like which of each of the parameters, like animation specs, and some tips on like how to do X or Y animations happen. Usually, when I start with documentation, at the beginning was really painful because we had this like I think it still exists like this huge graph of like what kind of animation do you want to do, and there was like 10 steps to any one of the APIs because there are several of them. And depending on the animation that you want, you end up with like different strategies on how you can do X, Y, or Z. So usually when I want to do something, I start with a theme. Like I visualize or like I draw a lot on like how do I want this animation to happen. And then I start like speccing like, okay, I'm going to start in this state and then end this stage. Which of the animations APIs allow me to do that? And that's how I usually go. And with that, I just go deeper into the documentation of that animation API. If it doesn't work, I basically just tinker left and right until it looks like I want it to look like. And that's usually how it goes. A lot of reading and a lot of try and error.
Right. And I'm curious, moving from the animations we've been doing in XML, moving more towards Compose now. How was the shift of the mental model, maybe
You
for you?
see, yes, I was there doing the XML animations, and it was an ordeal. So for those that don't know, we usually had before like XML animations, and you had to specify like this is my state, my initial state, and this is are all the animation steps that we want to do. And it was basically like creating a script of the animation on XML. The way you loaded that, it was also not great. So basically, it was a lot of boilerplate and a lot of like repetition of things, and it was just really painful to like do those steps. Now with the compose animation APIs, things are like super easy. Like there are some super simple ones that are just modifiers. Then literally you just do dodge animate content, and the whole screen already like does animation for you. There's no longer a need to like do the mental model all the steps. You just need to think about like the initial state and the end state. And if you don't want anything fancy in between, the framework just handles it for you. So the API already does like a default animation, and that's it. So the mental model, I think it changed from like really thinking like in each of the steps to just starting to think like beginning, end, That's it. Yeah,
And you can
I really
basically
enjoy them now. Sorry, go.
yeah, I wanted to say, and basically, when you toss in the state in there, you just know that okay, state A is here, state B is here, and everything is
Exactly.
done for you.
Exactly. Now, if you want
Got
a
it.
really fancy animation on a really out of the box animation, that was interesting thing happens, and that's where I really like to like build myself because there's like the easy part, as I said, like you just add a modifier, grab something on a composable, it's going to animate and it's going to work. But to make them interesting, you can get into the details and start changing animation specs, to start changing times, to start like combining animations of different components on the screen, so things just flow. And that's where the fun is for me, at least. So yeah, you can
Right.
go really simple or you can go really wild, and you're
Yeah.
allowed with the
So
same APIs.
yeah, and this brings me to a question that I wanted to ask, which is, do you see the animations or emotion in the application as an element of communicating something, or is it more of like a decoration to polish out the UI? How do you see this?
Depends. Yeah, depends. Like there are some animations are part of the app language, if that makes sense. Like it's a fancy little thing to like differentiate X, Y, or Z thing that you have in your app. But there is a lot to be said on animations being used to guide the user. And it's really easy to like just imagine like if there is a new notification, or like if you're subscribing in some pages, you see that little like shake and color change that users are already expecting from you. So, or if you want to like, bring attention to the user to some specific component on the screen, you can just make it change color or like move a little bit. And that's enough for like guide the user towards where you want them to be. So depending on the animation type that you want, as I said, it can be like a brand specific thing, like, animate your logo when you log in, or something that guides the user, like this is a place you want to click. But yeah. So depends, basically. Depends on where you want to go. Or you can go
Right.
creative and start doing like some creative coding, and then you can do whatever.
Of course. Um, and talking of which is like usually we are not getting designs with motion or with animation or anything in regard to specking out that part. So usually we are just given designs. This is the screen. Go. Um, how do you deal with this?
Yeah, it's an ongoing topic. I think you will be really lucky if you find a designer that actually sees motion as part of the design system, which I think in Android we're moving towards the right direction on that with a new expressive theme that actually has some of the motion embedded in there. But usually I just have to fight for it. Like if the people is just giving me like this is the screen, and if it's just something that is expanding or something that is changing, it's easy for me to like just not ask, just add it, make sure that we're aligned between iOS and Android, and that's it. But if I see a space, yeah, if I see a space that like this could really be a nice animation, I just ping my designer. Like he's great. Every time he already knows. Like every time he sees something, he's like, oh, here comes Nicole. And I just suggest things like that's basically how it goes. Like if they don't see it, I just suggest them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it could work." So here are some frames of how I would like this to go, and here you are, go. So yeah, my recommendation is like, if it is simple, just do it. It doesn't cost us anything. Just make sure, as I said, be aligned. If not, if you see something interesting, I just need to ask. Like in my experience, my designers never give me animations unless there's something specific or I ask for them.
Yeah, story of my life. I mean, the good or what actually makes you on top of others is that you are the one that is proactive and thinking about this and asking these people, okay, how we can bring this to the next level. Because most of
Yeah.
us, what we do is like, yeah, here is the design. We are not even going back to the designer to ask her or
Yeah.
him, like, hey, how do we bring this to the next level by adding motion or animations?
Yeah.
So kudos
Yeah.
for that. I would say there are some applications when you just open them, you see people have thought and they put effort into polishing it and making it super nice with animations.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
people are just blind
Yeah.
or
And
yeah,
that's
not looking into that at all.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like animations could like make it or break it for you. Like if you have a really nice motion language in your app, it's going to like move your app a little bit above, because like, oh, look at how delightful it is to use this thing, you know, like if, and then there are also some expectations from the users. The users don't expect things like to just like, you know, clank, 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 change things. There's some expectation of fluidity in there. But yeah, I highly think like we should be a bit more advocates. In general, designers should be also a bit more proactive on emotion. But if they aren't, we can just push for that. I mean, if we also get Android designs, will be great. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're doing a great job in that regard. Also with your talks and with being part of the community and proactive to actually make people think in these directions, to actually pay attention to these things that are very important.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Especially these
So
days, as I said, APIs are pretty easy. Literally, is a line. An easy ones is like instead of having if-else, replace everything with animated visibility, and you will have animations. But anyway, I
exactly.
ramble.
Yeah. No, but like that's maybe a nice segue where I wanted to bring the discussion, which is about talking a little bit about the APIs. We know that with the XML, it was quite a challenge, I would say, to animate things, depending obviously on the animation. But with Compose, it's super easy, or at least with some of the basics.
It is.
So sometimes it feels like you're having, I don't know, tons of APIs to achieve one thing. How do you, yeah, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, we do have a lot of APIs for that. As I mentioned, the little diagram where you can start on the top and start like moving with the leaves and like start asking like, hey, which animation do you actually want? Do you want to change stage? Do you want to change? I don't know. That's a good start point. I know it can be overwhelming, but you literally start from the beginning and start going down, and you end up with the API that works for you. The other suggestion that I can give you is like, if your animation is something really simple, try to use simple APIs. Like I categorize them like super simple ones, which is just wrapper composables, to a bit more complex ones that require you to think a bit more about the state of the animation or whatnot, which involves more coroutines. So if you're just doing something really simple, just stick with wrapping everything a composable and probably a bit with animation spec, and that's fine. But yeah, as I said, the graph is my go-to usually. When I'm like struggling, right now I have experience, so I just go directly. But if I was struggling on something, I just start there and go down. It's inside the Android official documentation as well, so it's not something invented.
Yeah, yeah, that's something that I wanted also to touch on, because the documentation sometimes feels a little bit overwhelming. Just about everything in
Yes,
Android documentation. This is
yes,
not an exception. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Um,
I must add that it's
so
much better these days, at
yeah,
least on
yeah,
animations. Yeah.
yeah. And also recently we started seeing the styles API, which is not maybe directly related to animations, but have you had a chance to explore it?
The styles API, specifically on what? Sorry, I don't think I have
Yeah,
touched that yet.
yeah. There is this new API, which is like as a new argument that you can pass to the composables that are um,
Oh, for the expressive
typically in the,
ones.
yeah, yeah. So
Yes,
like you
I
can just
haven't.
define
Mhm.
different.
Yes, yes, the motions and things. I haven't touched it yet. I am. It's in my to-do list for the next one. I know a little bit of it, and I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a move towards the right direction, because that will let you unify the animations that you want throughout your app, and that will also like make it easier for you to like do X, Y, or Z on there. I haven't.
Right,
I don't have a first-hand experience with that yet. We haven't migrated to expressive, but it's in my to-do list.
right. Yeah, I also haven't. You see, I don't know even how to ask the question because I haven't explored the API at all. I just
Yeah,
saw
no
there is
worries. I
something
can
new.
I can I can route people to like take a look at Rebecca Frank's videos on that. Like she's been doing a great job on like advocating for this. She's an Android liberal, so she's great at sharing about these new things.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I mean, something that I found as I was going before with building animations is that there is quite subtle difference when you want to animate multiple things on a screen. You can just use animate whatever as state. So we have that animate star state.
Yeah.
By animating different things. So for let's say a button, you can animate the color, the size, the shapes at the same time. However, you can get these few different animations off sync if you're just animating one by one. But then we have this transition API. So would you suggest that when you are having multiple things that you want to animate on a single component, you would be better off to use the transition API? How do you approach this in general?
Yeah. So as all animations depends on how complex the thing you're doing. If what I'm animating is something small, like for example, I have a button that and it's just one component, and I'm just changing like colors and I'm changing like the size or something. An easy trick to get away on like making sure the animations happen at the same time is have the definition of the animation specs being the same. So if you manage to make like the duration being the same in all of them, the animation is just going to start and end at the same time. If you have several components inside a screen that you want to animate at the same time, like for example, I want to change the size and color of the button, but at the same time, I want this like parent component to shrink, or I want this like other text to also move at the same time, or like when you're calling, I don't know, like like different components in the screen are changing. That's when I would suggest using transitions, because orchestrating this, like make sure all the animation specs have the same duration, can be annoying. But with transitions, you can literally just define the states of your screen. And depending on the state of the screen, you can make sure that all of the child animations, because you basically how this works is you chain all the animations inside this transition, are just going to follow the same pattern. So you can either go manually define like the animations like have the same duration, or go with API of transitions. But as I said, usually if it's just a small thing and just one component, I'm lazy and I'm just make sure animation specs are the same. If not, transition is the way to go. Another thing that I have noticed it as well, like when I'm doing all of this, like orchestrating different animations in one screen, is that having a state class is also really useful. Like something that people don't think too much about animations is that this is still a state in the UI, right? So you could define like all of the states and all of the values that you want at different states of your animation or states of your screen. And using a small state class, you can basically just pass that through your animation APIs as well and start animating from that. So you create a source of truth for that, and that's something that I also do a lot.
That's super
Yeah.
interesting. So you're saying it is kind of different state only for the animations, which is kind of decoupled from the screen state, or is it also part of it?
Depends on the type of animation, as I said. If the animation is tied to the state on the screen, like for example, you have a state on loading and you have another state on like when the content is shown, I'm going like really bare bones here, or you have another state when like, I don't know, something is errored, and you have a component that is shared among all of those states, you can tie that easily to the state of the animation. Like, I'm sorry, you can tie the state of the animation directly to the state of the screen, and basically just using that start animating the things. But the state I was mentioning is like if you have a really complex animation, like you have, and I usually use my example of the chip that has different components. Like if you have a chip that you need to change the color of the flop, you need to change the legs of positions, you need to change the glasses going up and down. You create a state class that holds all of that, like the position of the glasses, the position of the flop, the position of the legs, and then depending on that state that is specific to the animation happens. So that's where there's a state class come handy. So basically, animation simple, tied to the state of the screen, just bundle it with the state of the UI. If it has a specific animation that contains a lot of moving parts that is self-contained, just create a state for that. And that state can also be inside the state of the UI if you want, but usually it's tied to the life cycle of the animation, not the UI. But yeah, that's why I see things like if you have something that has different UI states, just create a state class for that.
That couldn't have been better or more precise. So thank you so much. That was so nice.
Sorry, I use cheap for examples everywhere.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, and one of the things that are actually allowing us to get more control over the animations that we're doing is the animation spec, which is, I think, very powerful API. Maybe some would say it is limited, but I mean, typically we would define either Spring or Tween, or at least the defaults are there. Um, do you use mostly those, or maybe you are working sometimes with keyframes? What was your way of doing things so far?
Yeah. So a small note, I gave a full talk about animation spec. So animation spec can get like quite complex if you will it. You can create your own animation specs as well. So just a small overview for the people that are not super experienced on this. Like animation spec is basically the specifications of the animation, and it's going to be the one that defines how the animation plays out. As we were talking in the beginning, most of these APIs work for like, this is my start, this is my end. I just want to animate here. So the movement basically from here to here can change drastically, right? So I could just like do a line directly and that's it. Or you could just,
Yeah,
stutter back and forward and then go there, or like take a loop and then land. Like there's a lot of things on that path that you can take to do that. And also like speed and like, yeah, a lot of things. So that part of like how the road is like how that road happens, that's basically animation spec. The ones that you were mentioning for like a spring is like, duplicating a spring, how a spring moves, like, bounces a little bit. Twin is just end to end, and that's it, like just a like simple animation. But I usually get deep in there and just start like customizing them for my talks. In my day-to-day work, I usually don't change them too much. I usually just use like spring or twin, but I do play with the values inside that because there are a lot of levels on how to customize this, right?
yeah,
So first level of customization, don't do anything, just wrap it on your API and that's it. Second level, start changing like, oh, I don't want a spring, I want a tween. Third level is like, oh, I want a spring, but I want my fancy spring, right? So I'm going to change how bouncy this is going to be and how fast this is going to move. And that's the third level of customization. But you can also get deeper and use keyframes, which is a really fancy animation spec that lets you define different keyframes inside the animation that you want to play. So you can play around with like how fast you want this to move, or like which positions you want this animation to peak, and that opens like doors for more customization on this. I'm really passionate about animation spec. As I was saying, my day-to-day job is usually just using twin and spring and changing the values to like make it look nice. But in my talks, I just use keyframes a lot or create my own animation specs that you can do. Or just, play around with the values. Keyframes is one of my favorites because it's kind of like customization, but still not that away from the given APIs. Uh, but yeah, sorry, I can talk about this for hours. So I can just say like, no, I usually don't play too much with them in my work, but in my hobby, yes, all of them.
yeah. So the question that we have asked, like in the cohort a lot, was like, how do
Yeah,
you choose whether you're going to use spring or tween? Um, is there any criteria? I mean, obviously depends on what animations you may have or you may
yeah,
want to achieve. So
yeah,
tween is most of the time goes like one round, like A to B, and then you're
yeah,
adding some curves, maybe
yeah,
like easing, which is something that also I am now getting into an area where I'm not very confident. I know there are some constants that you can use, like you can just
yeah.
use easing fast out, slow end
A
at
slow
the end.
in, yes,
Yeah, but obviously you can create something with keyframes that's kind of different.
yes.
Um, so
Why? Where?
you
Yeah,
said you are not using these APIs in production, like at work, too much. But how
yeah.
easy are these APIs to be used?
They are literally just a parameter in the APIs. Like if you have an animated visibility or animated content, or you use your animated state as, there's always like an animation spec. In most of them, there's an animation spec parameter that you can just override. The default in most of them is a spring, if I'm not wrong. So by default, you're going to get that bouncy effect because it's also like physically based, so it's easier anyway. But if you want something else, like a tweener, you have like, for example, if you want an animation to last a specific set of time, like if you want like, oh, this animation should last 300 milliseconds, then you go with tween because tween is a time-based animation. Spring is
Mhm.
physically based, so you don't get control on how fast this animation plays and whatnot. And it's really good for like, buttons and doing things because the bouncy effect is really nice. But if you want to have more control on the duration of it, you go with tween. And literally it's just like animation spec parameter equal tween, and inside a parenthesis you just set the duration. And if you want to go fancy and change the easing, you can also do that. But it's literally override a parameter. That's it. There's
Yeah.
nothing really complex. And as I said, a lot
And
of what I do is trial and error as well. So if there's an animation that doesn't look good, you can start just changing that and see how it works.
yeah, and what do you use typically? I mean, are you running this animation on a device or emulator, or do you use something inside Android Studio, the little tooling to test out how something would look like? I don't know if the easing curve feels natural, for example.
Yes. So I kind of like I do a mix. I usually just run the emulator or like run the device app and just play around with it because I like most of the animations that I do are gesture like basis, right? Like the user needs to do something on the screen for the animation to happen. It's like tap a button or slide something. So I like to feel how the animation feels. So that's why I run it on devices. If there's something tricky that involves like several steps or like the animation is too fast, I go to the previews. You can like basically tap on the animation in the previews. You can tap on the animations and you can play with the curve to see the animation play frame by frame. So if you want to like really go deeply and you have a complex animation that you want to debug, Android Studio has that. Literally in the previews, as I said, tap animation and then you can just slide and see how it plays. But for most of them, as I said, they're gesture based. So I just play on the phone to see how it feels. And if it still doesn't feel right, I just change and tweak.
Right. Okay, cool. All right. Next, I wanted to speak a little bit about so these are more animations that we are having, let's say, over components, but also with the motion, but with in general how Android went in the recent years. They are also paying a little bit more attention on um, polishing the UI in general, and now with the transitions between the screens, shared element
Oh,
transitions,
yeah, that one is
the
great.
gestures when you are navigating back, for example, that you're having the predictive gesture. So yeah, let's maybe share some experiences about shared transitions. Like I haven't done a lot between like transitions between screens. So I couldn't say I have lots of experience in that. Most of the apps that I built didn't
Yeah.
have that. But yeah, what is your opinion on that?
Surprisingly, I have actually used shared transitions in production. And it actually solved a big issue we had. Like we were building a multi-platform app and we had like of course different behaviors from Android and iOS of how the navigation and the bars behave because of how like the expectation of the users, whatnot. And some of that was our bar, like top bar being hidden or not in some specific scenarios. But you wanted like that nice animation of like the bar going away. So that is an easy example on how shared transitions work for us because we needed that bar to like animate up and down whenever we were moving towards the screens, and shared transitions work for that. Like it doesn't need to be like super complex things. Basically, if you have a shared component that is going to be in two screens like present, you can start thinking about shared transitions. And basically how the shared transitions work is like usually when you have a screen and you navigate to another one, it's just like if the other one just slides in and overrides the whole thing. So it's just like one state to the other. But with shared transitions, you can like keep alive that component, and instead of having like the same animation of the rest of the screen moving, you can like do something custom and specific for it. Like hide it up and down, or like make it bigger when you're like opening details, or like changing like the color, like make it spin. You can go wild. Um, so shared transitions, I actually am pretty excited about it, and I have also done a couple of demos on it, and it's basically the same APIs. Like you're still using animation speak, you're still like adding modifiers and whatnot. You're just getting the ability of thinking about a state that passes through two screens instead of like just one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
it opens a lot
And
of things.
when we are talking about screens, it's just a composable that represents the screen.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's just a composable that represents the screen. We
Right.
were doing some crazy things because you actually can pass the scope inside your like local providers for the components and like composables. So you don't need to be like passing the reference all along. You can basically just add it inside your composition graph, and you can just access that directly. which lets you like basically create a parent shared transition in the whole app. And if you want to use it in like some specific things, you don't need to like fish where the thing was initiated. You just get it from the composition local, which is
Hmm.
a nice trick. A nice trick, by the way. I can recommend that. It works.
Yeah, that's interesting because usually if you're having a navigation, let's say in Nav3, you would prevent passing that all around because it's passed through the composition local.
Exactly, exactly. So instead of like
Awesome.
passing basically a parameter to all the screens, you just get them from composition local.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember even at the beginning when Google created some of the sample apps where you can play with Compose. One of them was, and I remember there was a talk by Rebecca where there was like a side menu or like there was a button on top. I don't remember which application exactly was it, but it sort of slides and shrinks a little bit, so it makes like a 3D effect. And when
Yeah,
you look into the implementation, it was quite straightforward to achieve that. It was
yeah,
magical, like how it looked
yeah,
like.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's like my ongoing message on all my presentations is like animations APIs are no longer hard. Like if you want something nice, you can get away with it in just a couple of lines. Like literally, you don't need to go super deep on like creating your animation spec or creating all these math things. Like just playing around smartly with some of the animation APIs and some small like overrides, you get really nice animations.
Yeah. And I'm sure you are familiar with the saying that, I don't know, the last 20% or the polishing are taking the 80% of
Yes,
the time. Uh,
yes,
with with
yes.
these APIs, I feel like, yeah, it can be faster. It doesn't have to take like 80% of your development time.
Yes, yes, and it just makes like as I keep saying everybody like if you just build the UI like that, like how you're seeing on the Figma thing or whatever, it's just going to be there and everything is just going to feel clunky and whatnot. Like animations are everywhere, so there's expectation of the user for the app to flow. So if your app is not flowing, there's going to be more a bit of friction on the users, in my humble opinion. But anyway, I'm biased.
But okay. And yeah, something that naturally comes now to be discussed is like what are the frequent bugs that you are facing? How do you debug animations? Of course, we mentioned already the tooling that is available in Android Studio, but I don't know, sometimes maybe you are having an animation and you notice, I don't know, you are losing a frame or something. Where do you usually start figuring out what's going on?
Yeah, poof. Frames loss are a constant thing. I usually go back to the state handling. As I mentioned, I see animations as a collection of states, and I usually
Mhm.
just make sure that my state is correctly updated on the points where they need to be updated, and that I'm not like overly updating them. So it's basically compose, recomposition, debugging at the beginning. That's where I start as well. And then if this is still not working, I start like going adding breakpoints on the specific things and start like stopping here and there and try to see that. I also use the tool I mentioned, like in the previous, you can just open the animation and then you start like seeing if the animation is actually working. But if it is still too much, maybe I'm trying to do too much in my animation in my screen. So start like actually toning it down. Like I don't know, if I had an animated content on the whole screen, so like doing that, maybe I just like make it smaller. If I had too many nested, oh, because you can nest, of course. You had too many nested animated visibilities and animated content. Use the book and ensure that the state is correctly passed. And if not, tone it down, create a state, and just merge all of them into one. That's usually how I go to. Another thing that I oh I still find myself falling onto it is like, and I also see a lot of people falling on it, is ensure that your animations, if you have like gesture base or like something is like updating on the screen, ensure that you're using multiple states and that you're actually like changing the values, because if it is just a val or something and you just change the value, composition is not going to recompose. So just make sure you're doing that too. But yeah.
Yeah. So, would you say that this is something that comes typically as a bug in your
It's
experience?
just it's just when I'm starting, like I just forget basically, or like I just create like my multiple states and I'm just updating where I shouldn't, and it's like, oh right, I need to like wrap this. But yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
tiny thing at the beginning. Like if you don't see anything moving, but you are updating things, just make sure you're correctly causing a recomposition with your animations, listening to the right stage.
Yeah, I find that
Yeah.
particularly hard when it comes to pull request review. So yeah, you see the code, but it's not. I mean, oftentimes I find it hard to detect if there is any flaw in some of these. So actually, I feel more comfortable to
Yeah.
run that pull request and see how does it look like. Yeah,
Yeah, I think like the booking animations can be a bit tricky, especially as you mentioned on PRs. If you are not in the context of like what is this animation supposed to be, like there are some that are pretty easy. Like if it is just a tween of like or an animated visibility, fair, you can understand that. But knowing also the default values of some of them also helps. Like for example, if that X animation should be like shrinking or something and it's not overridden, the default ones is like collapsing. So that's where you could also go. But yeah, overall, if an animation is not nice or not looking good, I usually just go play on the phone. If it does not working, I start like tweaking around the code as well. But yeah,
yeah,
it's tricky. It can be tricky if you're not thinking on them.
yeah. Talking of which, have you ever had a situation when you felt like, okay, this animation is not worth it, so let's actually remove it?
Yes, yes. Yes, actually, on production code, we had a couple of those. There's a couple of like in this multi-platform app that I was mentioning. Like we had a couple of animations that we had to add in order to like make sure that iOS behave X way, Android behave Y way, and just make sure that they worked. But sometimes the states and the animations were too specific and too tied to some like framework system, like keyword opening and closing, and like making everything slide a little bit. Um, Getting deeply into that and actually adding observers to like keywords and start like watching for keyword states and start watching for like UI general like resizing states. It was not that the animation code was hard. It was more like getting and actually pinpointing the right state that you wanted to listen to for the animation was too much work for that. And the solution was basically like, let's wait until the API is updated. So they handle that inside and we don't need to like add our patch. And they did update it, so it worked. Yeah, there were some fun stories of like how we were like dealing with the initial, because we started with a lot of experimental APIs, of course, with some experimental navigation and keyword APIs that were just like a bit complicated to start observing. So yeah, it was fun. I did like added a compromise, like let's just do it this way. Once this updated, we can update it, but for now, let's just keep it like out of the box. It's fine. The users are not going to notice that it's like 1 DP higher or something. It's totally fine. But yeah, of course, there was a lot
Yeah.
of resistance.
Yeah, I had a fun situation once. We had a lazy column and then items inside, and then we used this modifier for animating the items. And
Oh man.
yeah, at some point it stopped working, or it was not like somebody
Yeah.
detected the list was kind of
Yeah.
bigger, and then something
Yeah.
is not working. We were like, how do we fix this? And we actually gave up fixing it and removing the animation, while actually what we detected is that we didn't have a key on the items.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, and
Yeah,
it was
that
such an easy fix.
animations and lists can be really annoying. The good thing is that there's also a lot of like list animation APIs now as well. So if you're using the composable like column, you can just like lazy column as well. You can start animating the items as well, like items appearing, items disappearing. That you can also animate.
Yeah,
We also had a couple of list animations that were not working right. Especially we have a really complex spacer animation in place, which works. It's just as I said, most of the animation issues that I find is state handling and pinpointing. That's the pain of the animation. It's not like how to build the animation, because animation is easy. It's like this is the spec, this is what we want. Getting the state is usually the problem, because it can be like too deep into the framework APIs, or it can be like just not accessible. So you need to like start like adding patches and like listening to that with external or like side effects and things. So that's where most of my issues come from on production code. But yeah,
right.
it's fun anyway. Like once you get them, it's like yes.
The satisfying effect afterwards is like,
Yeah.
yeah, I made it.
Yeah.
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 Although I had a very hard time a few times trying to figure out how I can. So I'm having a pager, and or whatever it is called in Compose, but
Yeah.
some of these items are not like I'm not having a fixed size for them because the content size is dynamic.
Uh,
And then
yeah.
as you're scrolling, it jumps, the size.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
fixing that was quite a challenge, and then animating at least the
Yeah.
content size
Yeah.
helps
Yeah. A
generally.
trick for that trick that I use actually for those, because that happens also. That's a good point. I forgot to mention this on like usual issues. Another issue that I see a lot in production and in mine is precisely that. Like if you have an animated like something that appears or disappears, the rest of the components usually do a little jump.
Mhm.
My fix for that is grab the content in a box, basically. So you have an external box that just like saves the space, if that makes sense. So if you don't have your component, it kind of like saves the space and resizes, and then have the animation grabbing that. So for example, it's like if you're hiding a box and the other items are like just moving around doing crazy things, you can grab them in a box and they just with that, if there's nothing, the box holds the space. The other thing is if you have an animation like this, we encountered this a couple of times, like you have a text field and you want something that, comes up and down. It can also like have weird behaviors, like the thing starting from the middle or like starting from top to bottom. There is another parameter in all of these APIs, which is called anchor, that I don't think
Mhm.
a lot of people know. The precise name escapes me. It's like anchor something. I will need to check that. Um, but basically it lets you anchor from where the animation should start. It usually starts from the middle or the top. But if you edit that, you can get that nice transition. Like animation is from here, so from here it expands instead of from top to bottom. If that makes sense. But yeah,
Oh
that
yeah,
also happens
it
a
does.
lot. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
interesting. And
yeah.
when we
So
are talking
that's
about this box that you are wrapping the things, do you
yeah.
also put animate content inside on that box as a modifier?
Depends on what I want. As I said, if I just want to hold the space, it's just there. But if I want the other content to do that, it basically takes the size of the other item. Like, for example, in your pager, I would have like one that takes the space, like full space, and then it directly updates to the next space while the animation is happening. So it kind of like reserves the space the animation is going to take fully, so the animation just like expands. So it kind of like
Right.
doesn't have an animation, it just takes the space of the full item, if that makes sense. So in that way, you don't get the jump because the space is reserved, so the animation just plays out in there.
Yeah, it
Does that
makes
make
a lot of
sense? I don't
sense.
know if it's making sense. I think it makes more sense in code, but that's basically the thing. It's a
Yeah.
box that reserves the space, so the animation doesn't need to do the pushing of the other components themselves, basically.
Yeah, interesting. And talking about this Anchor API, I'm not familiar with it in terms of animations. The only
Yeah.
place where I saw Anchor in the API was, I think, something related to the context menus. Like when you have a menu that
Yeah.
shows when you click
Yeah.
on a button, let's say, you can anchor it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is kind of
It's
different, I
something
guess.
like that. It's something like that, actually. Like, yeah, you're basically saying from where the animation should play, because it's the animation spec all over again. Like, if you're expanding something, you can expand like from top to bottom, or from the middle, or the one you want. In my case, was like from bottom to top, but that's not the default. The default is like expanding, pushing things down, basically. So that's where the anchor works. Like, anchor is down, so you push things up instead. Um, as I say, it's not named Anchor. I think it's like Anchor something, but it's like the anchor is in the word. I would need to check the names exactly. I always forget it.
Yeah,
I just literally
no
do
worries.
dot anchor. I need it to complete. So yeah,
Okay. Cool. All right. So the next thing I want to discuss with you is something that's really big. So these animations are intentionally having, let's say, 300 milliseconds by default. It's not something that was chosen by coincidence. Is accessibility. So there are tons of aspects when it comes to accessibility and making apps accessible, and animations in that regard are also part of like we have to be careful when designing the animations with
yeah,
accessibility.
yeah.
So what are some of the maybe the issues that you are dealing with when it comes to animating UIs in regards to accessibility? What are
Yeah.
the things that all people miss?
Yeah. So to be to be totally honest, and this is like something I have in my experience, I feel like a lot of people don't give accessibility the space it deserves. Like they usually just go with like, add the label so the text is mentioned or something. Um, some easy wins that people also like ignore is like adding labels and just like, adding different ways for identifying these animations that people just don't do. That's an easy one. Another one is like animations, like depending on the person that is using your app, they may not even see the animation, right? So
Hmm.
if you really want to think for like certain group of people that is using your app, like you may want to give them an option to disable them as well. Like I know Android, you have a general Android like disable animations. So you also need to consider to the scenarios like, okay, my animation may not play. Uh, is there anything I would need to change for like the experience to be similar, right? Like as I was saying, like getting the attention of the users to this button. So instead of doing that, if like the animation is disabled, you can just literally just add another like read, like text read thing, like here is a button you may want to click. Um, so is basically like usually people don't think about animations to start with. So once you're thinking on animations, you will need to think about like what happens if my animation is not played. Like is there something I need to change on the design for that to work? The other thing is like, of course, you need to be really careful about like the colors that you're using. Like don't add flashing lights. Don't like those are the easy wins as well. Like don't add flashing lights. Make sure like the colors are like contrast enough when you're like shading and changing things. Um, and just overall like think about like that's the part that I find hard in industry. Like think about like this type of users, like people that need accessibility inside your app. Like how would you experience that? And a really good designer that we had actually like did a test with that. Like she basically turned off the screen and so like doing everything was like a screen reading. And the challenge was like to identify which screen we were and what not. I think doing that exercise also with animations would work. But yeah, it's basically that.
Yeah.
My two tip is like don't forget the labels. Labels are important. Um, consider like if your animation is not playing, do you need to do something else to kill the attention of the
Yeah.
user? Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
that's
usually my go-to.
also, yeah, that's also something I wanted to check with you, because like most of the time in my experience, what we do is like, yeah, if there is reduced motion turned on the
Yes,
general
yes.
settings,
Oh yeah,
you are
that
good to
also
go.
well.
But yeah,
If
and then
not,
some people are
give them an
just
option.
designing reduced animation, like in a way change the
Yes,
animation not only not to play, or
yes.
maybe change something in that
Yes,
regard.
yes, fair, fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about the reduced motion, but yeah, here's my point of the accessibility thing. I'm also one of those silly ones. But yeah, that's another topic. Like, just have different levels and options for that. Like, at some point, we were adding, like, in another company I was, we were basically checking for those values as well. Like, is it reduced motion? It is like color contrast that you also have. Is it just a screen reader? And depending on that, we had different types of animations. So as I said, if the animation is not playing, oh, then just like speak, like do the screen reader thing, so like they know this is where they want to go. If like they have reduced motion, then just don't play the moving thing. Just do color change or something. Or like like those kind of things. Yeah,
And so
it
you
just
kind of go through a sort of a checklist, that
yes.
and you are actually checking whether all these criteria is
Yes.
fulfilled.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. And play different animations depending on that. In any case, like Android, as I said, has an option like doing this by default. Like if you're using the APIs directly, like you will get some of that out of the box. Like if they have reduced like no animations, whatnot, they will just not play. But yeah.
Yeah.
It's more like thinking how the product would work and for that people.
Yeah, and it's interesting to check also with the designer how you're going to approach this. Are you going to, I don't
Exactly.
know, travel short duration, or I mean, have shorter duration for animation?
Exactly. Or change
Are
it
you going to,
completely.
yeah,
Yeah.
as you said, fade instead of slide, or just change the color?
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes. Yes. Instead of like moving things around, just like make it like change color as I said or something like that. It's just like putting yourself on the position of the different type of people that is using your app and the different people that may need these accessibility features, like how they experience your app with these features on. And that's something that usually we don't give the space and time for, but I think it requires its own like space and its own time to really think about them, because it's not just a simple like, oh, just add a label and let them read. Like if you really want to make your app accessible, you are not going to get away with things that are out of the box. And Eve is another person that also won a Cody Award, I may say. Like she's a really big advocate about accessibility. I can highly recommend you to take a look at her talks.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I mean, some companies are taking accessibility very, very seriously. Like I used to work for a company once that actually have hired a blind person for
Oh, that's
testing
great.
how accessible the application is, and that was such a great experience because you have this person sitting next to you and telling you this doesn't work, this should be done this
Yeah.
way, because then you have an expert in the topic.
Yes,
Yeah,
and you also can get a lot of user research. Like this person I was mentioning that was like doing the test without like turning off the screen and just going with the screen reader to like us to guess which place we were. She was also doing a lot of like accessibility user testing, like with blind people, with people with like hard of like eyesight, and people that are like needed the motion sickness thing. And it was just an experience, and it is really humbling to take a look at how this looks like through their eyes. So yeah, it's really really
yeah.
interesting.
And it's nice that these things are also coming now through law enforcement. At least in US and in Europe, we have now laws
Yes,
that are forcing you to actually think about these things.
yes,
So
I'm really glad
yeah,
for that, to be honest. Like I know it's going to be like its own topic and that we will need to navigate. But yeah, it's something that we should talk more about. Like having, in my humble opinion, making sure we all have access to the features and at least have a similar experience is just the right way to take. Like, why should we punish people for not being able to use our apps the way we want them to use them?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so that's great. All right, now, um, how about AI? How much are you using AI in your work? And what's been your experience in terms of, I don't know, how good it is with animations, or maybe in general in your experience? Let's discuss that.
Yeah. Huh. The AI topic, unavailable topic these days. I am using AI a lot. Like in my job, I use it. I In my experience, it is quite okay with animations that are like pretty straightforward. Like if you're expanding something and you're not like moving too far away from the defaults. I haven't found it to be great on delicate animations. Like for example, this animation I was mentioning about like the toolbar hiding, or like the spacer I was mentioning as well. Like every time I sent my AI agent like, hey, go and change this a little bit, or like make it like, I don't know, do a loop or whatever, it usually breaks everything. Or like it ends up with like a really clunky feeling thing, and it loves to override animation specs just because. So if you know, like, if you're not like super familiar with animation like APIs, you can see the thing and you just see a block of code, like it's like, oh yeah, this super complex thing, and but it's working, sure, let's go. But you don't realize like you could just get away like adding animated content and you don't need all of that. Like it could really, it goes two ways. Like either goes and tries to override everything and like it all the values which are useless, or it just breaks the app and like it just breaks animation and it just doesn't work. um so yeah, if it is a simple one, it works, but you will need to be careful to clean up the code a little bit. If it is a complex one, I usually just go manual. Like it is a good starting point, but once it is already like the code in there, I need to go in and clean it up because it usually struggles with like new APIs that are coming out, or like default values that are available, or like it just tries to like use animatable for everything and it will work, right? But
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like solving a little problem with like a big hammer or something. I don't know.
yeah,
It,
yeah.
it
So
can
what
be
I'm
tricky.
hearing, yeah, what I'm hearing you say is like you definitely need to know what you want to achieve and how that's achievable. And then whatever AI gives you, you have to be able to judge and to make sure
Yes.
that's exactly what you
Yes.
need. You
Yes.
still need
Yes.
to have that
Exactly.
expertise. And that's not only
Exactly.
about animations, it's
Not
in
only on
general.
animations. Yes. Yes. I was going to mention like that's my experience in general. Like so far, I have experience like I am an Android developer, right? So whenever I see the code that the agent comes like and arrives to me, it's like it works, yes, but I can see right away like if I don't tweak it or like if I don't like ask corrections, and that's how I work with it, the agent. Like I need to do an iteration loop of like, hey, this is wrong, this is blah blah. So you cannot just let AI go on and do your thing and chip it. You like I always in my experience needs to go in and start like doing things and sometimes go manual, especially with animations. I have found that it's not great and delicate animations as I mentioned. But also delicate things. Like if this is a complicated state, like the one I was mentioning, like we had to go and listen to all the keyword state changes and the list changes and whatnot. It is not great at this custom state thing either. Like it really requires a bit of more hand holding in my experience to like achieve what you want. But yeah,
Right.
if I am not an expert in the field, and I experienced this myself because I was playing around with like some web things and some iOS things. Like I'm not a full expert. Like I know something a little bit, but not an expert. I was just chipping things because like, wait, it sounds sane. As an Android developer, that's how I would do it. But then I was getting reviews and things like from actual Swift developers that were saying like, "What are you doing?" um, so yeah,
Yeah.
you still require that expertise, like knowing what to ask, which is easy if you're like moving on mobile because at the end it's similar experience, and have a little bit of experience on the like the code base and like the language you're using because it can be, you can add a lot of like wrong code that works, but maybe it's not really safe, or like if you have some edge cases that are of course not contained, or like it's a simpler way to do that, which is what I usually find with animations thing. Like it just overcomplicates the thing. What it could just be a wrapper of animated visibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it also boils down to the actual person that is using this thing, how easygoing they are with trusting what AI suggests. I've experienced
Yeah.
working with people that are very conservative and also people that are very
Mhm.
open into like whatever AI suggests. However,
Yes.
you can easily see the code quality degrading over time if you blindly just take the suggestions from AI.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
the expertise,
And that's also a thing to bring up. Like this is a bigger AI conversation that we're not going to have time to cover, of course. But just be wary that whatever AI code you're chipping, you're an owner of that. Like at the end, if something
exactly.
breaks, are you going to blame AI? No, you're going to be the one to blame because you were the one working on that feature. So it's your job to fix it now.
Yeah.
So just be careful on what you're shipping and make sure that you understand what you're shipping, because if you don't know it, how are you going to like actually understand like why it broke or what is wrong, or like actually the limitations and edge cases that may appear.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's spot on. Really well said. All right, Nicole, thank you so much. It's been about an hour or close to an hour. Is there something you would like to add, to share? Maybe something, what comes next for you?
Sure. Like, I think this is, as I said, the message I always say on my talks. Like, don't be afraid of animations. Animations are really easy these days. You don't need to go wild and custom and create everything. You can just literally just add a line and you have really nice animations already. And don't be afraid to bring them up also in your like designed refinements or whatever meeting you have with them. What comes next? I'm always around in Berlin area, so if there's a conference in Europe, I may be there. Don't be afraid to just go and ping me. I'm always happy to like try to solve the puzzle of how the animation will be built, which is the part that I find fun. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome.
Thank you, Joe.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for coming to the live stream. It was really fun for me. Although the heat is getting a little bit too much, but yeah,
Yes, the
uh,
heat wave.
yeah.
Thank you, Joe. This was great.
Thanks
And
once again. Yeah. Till the next time. Cheers.
next time, cheers.
Bye bye.